The sound of a gunshot is louder than you think. It doesn't just ring in your ears, it rattles your teeth. For Elena Vance, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in student debt, that sound changed everything in a heartbeat. She wasn't supposed to be a hero. She was just supposed to pour the coffee. But when she saw the glint of metal in the rainy window reflection, she didn't think. She screamed, "Get down!" and threw her body over the most dangerous man in the city. The bullet that was meant to end the reign of Dante Moretti tore through her shoulder instead. In that split second, the waitress died, and a target was born. This is the story of how saving the devil didn't grant her a wish. It trapped her in hell. The neon sign of Sal's 24-hour diner buzzed with an irritating rhythmic hum that felt like it was scratching the inside of Eleanor Vance's skull. It was 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in late October, and the rain was lashing against the plate glass windows of the establishment, located on the outskirts of Chicago. The diner smelled of stale grease, lemon polish, and the damp wool of the few patrons seeking refuge from the storm. Elena adjusted her apron, wincing as the strings dug into her waist. She had been on her feet for 10 hours. Her nursing school tuition was due in 3 days, and her bank account was currently sitting at $42. She poured a refill of black coffee for Old Man Miller in booth 4, flashing a tired but practiced smile. "Thanks, sweetie," Miller grunted, not looking up from his crossword puzzle. "You need anything else? Let me know," Elena said, her voice soft. The bell above the entrance chimed, a sharp sound that cut through the low murmur of the radio. The atmosphere in the diner shifted instantly. It wasn't a noise, it was a drop in pressure. 3 men walked in. They were dressed in suits that cost more than the entire diner building. The man in the center was tall, with broad shoulders that strained against charcoal-colored wool. His hair was dark, slicked back, and his eyes were the color of cold steel. He didn't look like he belonged in a place that served meatloaf for $8.99. This was Dante Moretti. Elena didn't know his name yet, but she knew his type. Trouble. Expensive, lethal trouble. The 2 men flanking him, his bodyguards, scanned the room with predatory efficiency. They checked the exits, the kitchen door, and the few sleepy customers before nodding to the man in the center. They took the corner booth, the one with the best view of the door and the street. Elena took a breath, grabbed 3 menus and walked over. Her hands were steady, a trait she prided herself on. "Welcome to Sal's. Coffee to start." The man in the center looked up. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome, but in a way that made you want to step back rather than lean in. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, disrupting the perfection of his face. "Black," Dante said. His voice was a low rumble, smooth but heavy. "And water. Bottled. Coming right up." As Eleanor turned to the counter, she felt his eyes on her back. It wasn't a lecherous stare. It was the stare of a man who assessed everything as a potential threat or asset. 10 minutes passed. The diner remained quiet, save for the rain. Elena returned to the counter to tally up receipts. From her vantage point, she could see the reflection of the street in the large front window. The rain distorted the streetlights into long, bleeding streaks of yellow and red. Then she saw it. A black sedan rolled slowly to a stop across the street. The headlights cut off. The window rolled down. It happened in slow motion. The reflection in the glass showed a long, matte black barrel extending from the car window. It was pointing directly at the corner booth, directly at the back of Dante Moretti's head. Elena's mind, trained by 2 years of nursing anatomy classes, processed the trajectory instantly. The bodyguards were looking at the kitchen door. Dante was looking at his phone. No one saw the car. Logic screamed at her to drop to the floor behind the counter. Survival instinct told her to freeze. But Eleanor didn't do either. "Get down!" she screamed, the sound tearing from her throat with a ferocity that startled even her. She didn't wait for them to react. She vaulted over the low partition, separating the counter from the seating area, and sprinted. The sedan's muzzle flashed. Elena threw herself at the charcoal suit, her momentum knocking Dante sideways into the vinyl bench. Crack! The sound was deafening. The window shattered, raining glass like diamonds. Elena felt a sensation like a sledgehammer hitting her left shoulder. It wasn't pain at first, just a massive hot impact that spun her around. She collapsed onto the linoleum floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Chaos erupted. Dante's bodyguards were up instantly, their own weapons drawn, firing through the shattered window at the screeching tires of the retreating car. Dante Moretti scrambled up from the booth, his eyes wild. He looked at the hole in the booth where his head had been a second ago. Then he looked down. Elena was lying in a pool of expanding crimson. The white of her uniform was disappearing under the red stain. The pain hit her then, a searing, white-hot agony that made her vision blur. "Don't move," a voice commanded. It was Dante. He was on his knees beside her, his expensive suit soaking up the grease and blood on the floor. His hands, large and surprisingly warm, pressed hard against her shoulder. You were," Elena stammered, her teeth chattering from shock. "Save your breath," Dante growled. He looked up at his men. "Get the car around, now! We aren't waiting for an ambulance." "Boss, it's too risky to move her," one guard shouted, scanning the street. "She took a bullet for me, Luca," Dante roared, his composure shattering. "I am not letting her bleed out on a diner floor. Bring the car!" Elena's vision began to tunnel. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to stretch and warp. The last thing she saw was Dante Moretti's steel-grey eyes, no longer cold, but filled with a terrifying intensity. "Stay with me," he ordered, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. "You hear me? You stay with me." Then the world went black. Waking up felt like fighting through deep water. Elena gasped, her eyes snapping open. She expected the smell of stale coffee and the hard floor of the diner. Instead, she smelled antiseptic, lavender, and expensive leather. She wasn't in a hospital. She knew hospitals, the beeping monitors, the thin curtains, the fluorescent glare. This room was dim, lit by soft, recessed lighting. The walls were panelled in mahogany. She was lying in a bed with sheets that felt like silk. She tried to sit up, but a sharp spike of pain in her left shoulder slammed her back down. A groan escaped her lips. "Careful," a calm voice said from the corner. Elena turned her head. A man in a white coat was adjusting a drip line connected to her arm. He looked like a doctor, but he wore a Rolex and had the weary expression of a man who had seen too many bullet wounds. "Where am I?" Elena croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "You are in a safe location," the doctor said. "I'm Dr. Ares. You've been out for 2 days. The bullet passed through the deltoid muscle, broken clavicle, severe tissue damage, and significant blood loss. But you're lucky. 2 inches to the right, and it would have hit the subclavian artery. You'd be dead." "2 days," Elena whispered. Panic set in. "My job, my tuition." The door to the room opened. Dante Moretti walked in. He looked different than he had in the diner. He was wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tattoos that wound around his forearms. He looked tired, but his presence still dominated the room. "Leave us, Aris," Dante said. The doctor nodded and quietly slipped out. Dante approached the bed, stopping a few feet away. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "How is the pain?" he asked. "Manageable," Elena lied. She tried to pull the sheet up higher. "Where am I? Who are you?" You know who I am, Dante said softly. Or at least, you know what I am. People don't shoot at accountants in diners at 2 a.m. Elena swallowed hard. You're the guy who almost got his head blown off. A corner of Dante's mouth twitched. And you're the waitress who decided to play linebacker. He stepped closer, his voice dropping an octave. Why did you do it? I don't know, Elena admitted honestly. I saw the gun, I just reacted. Dante stared at her, searching for a lie. In his world, nobody did anything for free. Altruism was a myth. Everyone had an angle. But looking at this pale, terrified girl with calloused hands and cheap earrings, he found nothing but raw honesty. You saved my life, Dante said, the weight of the words heavy in the air. In my world, a debt like that is binding. I don't want a debt, Elena said, trying to sound braver than she felt. I just want to go home. I have rent to pay. Dante laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, black smartphone. He tapped the screen and turned it toward her. It was a news report. The headline read, "Shootout at Sal's Diner. 1 dead, 1 missing." Missing? Elena gasped. Who died? The driver of the car. My men caught up to him a few blocks away, Dante said coldly. But the people who ordered the hit, they know you saw them. They know you interfered. If you go back to your apartment, Elena, you will be dead within the hour. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. So what? I'm a prisoner. No, Dante said, stepping right up to the edge of the bed. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. She could smell his cologne, sandalwood and tobacco. You are under my protection. You stay here, in my house, until I find out who put the hit out, until I eliminate the threat, and if I refuse, then I put you in a car, drive you to your apartment, and wait for the police to find your body tomorrow morning, Dante said brutally. Those are your choices. Live in a cage of gold, or die in the gutter. Elena stared at him, tears pricking her eyes. She was trapped. I need to call my mum, she whispered. No phones, no contact with the outside world. It's for their safety as much as yours, Dante said, straightening up. His voice softened, just a fraction. I will handle your debts. Your tuition is paid. Your rent is covered. You focus on healing. He turned to leave. Wait, Elena called out. Dante paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. What happens when you catch them? She asked. Dante's eyes darkened, turning into abyssal pools. Then, Elena, you will see exactly why they wanted me dead. A week passed. The safe location turned out to be a sprawling penthouse atop one of Chicago's most exclusive skyscrapers. It was a fortress of glass and steel, floating above the clouds. Elena's recovery was slow. Her arm was in a sling, and every movement was a reminder of that night. She was given free rein of the penthouse, but the private elevator was locked, and the stairwell was guarded by a man named Luca, the same guard from the diner. It was a beautiful prison. The fridge was stocked with gourmet food, the library was filled with first editions, and the view was breathtaking. But the silence was deafening. Dante was a ghost. He came and went at odd hours, often returning with bruised knuckles or a fresh stain on his shirt that looked suspiciously like blood. He avoided her, yet Elena felt his presence everywhere. One evening, boredom drove Elena to the main living area. The lights were dimmed. She thought she was alone, but then she heard voices coming from the balcony. The heavy glass doors were slightly ajar. It doesn't add up, boss, a voice said. It was Luca. I know, Dante's voice replied. He sounded exhausted. The driver was a low-level freelancer. No connections, no paper trail. Someone hired him anonymously. Could it be the Russo family? Luca asked. No, Russo doesn't use freelancers. He uses his own family. This was sloppy, but the timing was perfect, Dante said. The sound of a lighter flicking and the inhale of smoke followed. They knew exactly where I would be. Sal's diner isn't on my rotation. I only decided to go there 10 minutes before we arrived. Elena froze in the shadows of the living room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Only 3 people knew you were going to Sol's," Luca said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Me, you, and Julian." Julian. Elena had met Julian once in the past week. He was Dante's younger brother, charismatic, smiling, and seemingly harmless. He had brought her flowers on her second day. He was the complete opposite of Dante. Where Dante was shadow, Julian was light. "Julian is my brother," Dante snapped. The anger in his voice was palpable. "Don't you ever imply that again." "I'm just doing my job, Dante. You're the capo. If someone inside is leaking your location—" "Enough!" Dante commanded. Elena tried to back away, to retreat to her room before they saw her, but her slipper squeaked against the marble floor. The balcony door flew open. Dante stood there, silhouetted against the city lights. He had a glass of whiskey in one hand and a cigarette in the other. His eyes locked onto hers instantly. "How long have you been standing there?" he demanded. Elena stepped into the light, lifting her chin defiantly. She was wearing one of the silk robes the staff had provided, her injured arm resting in the sling. "Long enough to know you don't trust your own brother." Luca stepped forward, looking menacing, but Dante held up a hand to stop him. "Leave us, Luca." The guard hesitated, then nodded and disappeared toward the elevator. Dante walked into the room, closing the balcony door against the wind. He looked at Elena, really looked at her, for the first time in days. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. "Eavesdropping is a dangerous habit in this house, Elena," he warned, taking a sip of his drink. "Kidnapping waitresses is a dangerous habit in general," she retorted. Dante chuckled darkly. He set the glass down and walked toward her. The air in the room seemed to thin. He stopped inches from her. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You think I'm the villain here?" Dante murmured. "Aren't you?" Elena challenged. "You kill people. You run a criminal empire." "I keep order," Dante corrected. "I keep the monsters at bay, and right now there is a monster hunting me. And because you saved me, he's hunting you too." He reached out, his hand hovering near her injured shoulder. He didn't touch her, but the proximity made Elena's breath hitch. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. "Why do you care?" Elena whispered. "I'm just a nobody." Dante's expression softened, a crack in the armor. "You're the only person in 10 years who didn't ask, 'How much?' before saving my life. That doesn't make you a nobody, Elena. It makes you the most dangerous person in this city." He leaned in closer. "Because you make me feel like I might be worth saving." For a moment, Elena thought he was going to kiss her. The magnetic pull was undeniable. She wanted him to. God help her. She wanted the monster to kiss her. But suddenly, Dante's phone buzzed. The moment shattered. He pulled back, his face hardening instantly into the mask of the Don. He checked the message, and his jaw clenched. "Go to your room, Elena." "Lock the door," he said, his voice ice cold. "What?" "Why?" "Because," Dante said, pulling a gun from the holster at the small of his back. "Julian just arrived downstairs, and he didn't use the front door." Elena didn't hesitate. The raw command in Dante's voice was enough. She hurried back to her bedroom, the silk robe whispering against the floor. As she locked the heavy door, she heard the frantic movement of armed men outside in the hallway. She pressed her ear against the thick wood. The penthouse had gone from silent refuge to a hive of imminent violence. Dante's voice was lethal, strained low enough to be a warning rather than a shout. "Drop it, Julian. You didn't come up 30 flights of stairs just for a chat about the weather." "Don't be dramatic, Dante," Julian's voice replied, sounding unnervingly cheerful. "I just wanted to see if the pretty little waitress was enjoying her stay. She looked a little pale when I saw her the other day. Did you tell her I sent the flowers?" "Get out," Dante ordered. "Now." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" Julian laughed, a high, brittle sound. "You can't, Dante. You never could. You're too busy trying to be the good Moretti, the respectable one, while I clean up your messes and pay for your habits." A loud crash echoed, sounding like a vase shattering. The fighting had begun. Elena backed away from the door, her heart hammering. She grabbed the first thing she could use as a weapon, a heavy crystal lamp from the nightstand. She held it with her good arm, the sling swinging awkwardly. "You knew I was going to Sal's, Julian," Dante growled, the sound muffled by movement. "The only reason you knew was the meeting you set up with Father Thomas, the one I cancelled 5 minutes before I left." "It was an insurance policy, brother," Julian said, his voice closer now, laced with bitter resentment. "You took over the organization, Father's legacy, and left me the scraps. I'm the one with the brains, Dante. You just have the muscle and the martyr complex." The sound of shattering glass from the main living room followed, louder this time. Then a sharp, concussive sound, a suppressed gunshot. Elena couldn't stand the waiting. If Dante was killed, his guards would likely treat her as a loose end. She unlocked the door, holding the lamp like a club. She slipped out, hugging the shadows of the long hallway. The scene in the living room was carnage. The expensive furniture was overturned. Luca and another guard, Marco, were struggling with 2 large men Elena didn't recognize. These men were silent, masked, and moving with professional swiftness. Julian was nowhere in sight. Dante was backed up near the shattered balcony doors, his gun pointed steadily. He wasn't aiming at the mercenaries. He was focused on Julian, who had just kicked the heavy door to the master study shut, locking himself inside. "The server room is in there, boss," Luca yelled, landing a vicious elbow. "He's deleting the accounts." Dante turned, his attention divided between his traitorous brother and the gunman. That was Julian's chance. As Dante sprinted toward the study door, Julian burst out, not with a gun, but with a jerrycan of accelerant. Julian tossed the contents, a stream of highly volatile liquid, across the antique Persian rug and toward the study door. "If I can't have the family, Dante," Julian screamed, his face contorted with madness, "no one will." Julian pulled a lighter from his pocket. Dante saw the flicker of the flame. He moved, but he was too far. The distance was impossible to cover in time. Elena, still holding the lamp, didn't think about the risk, the fire, or the men fighting. She saw the trajectory of the flame and the path Dante was taking. With a desperate cry, she hurled the heavy crystal lamp. It wasn't aimed at Julian, but at the arm holding the lighter. The lamp struck Julian's wrist with brutal force. The lighter flew high, spinning, before clattering harmlessly against the stone hearth, unlit. The distraction was enough. Dante didn't waste the second. He lunged, tackling Julian and slamming him against the marble pillar. The fight was quick, savage, and silent. Dante subdued his brother with 3 swift movements, leaving him slumped, gasping for air. He looked up at Elena, who was standing trembling in the hallway. "Luca, cordon off the area, get him out of here, and check the girl," Dante barked, his face pale with exertion and raw emotion. Luca ran to Elena, inspecting her rapidly. "She's fine, boss. She saved us. She hit his arm." Dante walked over to her, his chest heaving. He didn't speak. He just looked at her, his eyes blazing with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "You saved me again," he stated, the words barely a whisper. "You saved my life and my operation." Elena dropped the sling slightly, clutching her injured arm. He was going to burn the building down," she stammered. Dante reached out, his hand gently cupping the back of her neck. He pulled her against him, pressing her face against his damp linen shirt. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was the desperate, possessive hold of a man who had just stared into the abyss. "I know," he muttered into her hair. "Thank you, Piccola. Thank you." The aftermath was clinical. By dawn, Julian was gone, whisked away to an undisclosed location. The mercenaries were dealt with. One dead, the other two captured and silent. The penthouse was being swiftly and silently repaired, the air scrubbed clean of the smell of accelerant and gunpowder. Elena was taken back to her room, given a sedative, and ordered to rest. When she woke up in the late afternoon, Dante was sitting in the armchair beside her bed, watching her. He had changed into fresh clothes and looked perfectly composed, but his eyes were bloodshot. "We need to talk," he said, setting aside the sheaf of papers he was reviewing. Elena sat up slowly, clutching the pillow to her chest. "About Julian?" "About us," Dante corrected, his gaze unwavering. "Twice now, you have intervened and saved my life. I don't know if you're an angel or a fool, Elena, but I know one thing. You are no longer just a debt." He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "I cannot let you go. Julian's associates know your face now, and even if I eliminate every threat, I won't sleep at night knowing you're out there, pouring coffee and waiting for a bullet to find you." "So what's the plan?" Elena asked, her voice tight. "You chain me to a radiator?" "No, I give you a choice," Dante said. He stood up and walked to the foot of the bed. "I need someone I can trust, someone who sees the truth, not the facade, someone loyal, not bought." He looked her directly in the eye. "I want you to stay, not as a hostage, but as my eyes, my assistant, my chief of staff, whatever you want to call it. You will be protected by my name, and you will live a life you could never have imagined." Elena scoffed. "And what do I do? Handle your schedule? Do you have to remind me that I'm a nursing student, not a criminal mastermind?" "No," Dante said, running a hand over his face. "You learn. You listen. You tell me who is lying. You have an instinct for danger, Elena. You saw the rifle in the reflection. You saw the betrayal in Julian's eyes when I couldn't. That kind of honesty is priceless." He walked back to the chair and picked up the papers. "This is a statement from Julian's captured associate, Marcus Thorne. He admits Julian was funneling money out of the Southside accounts for months to build his own army. Look it over. Tell me what I'm missing." He tossed the folder onto her bed. Elena hesitated, then slowly opened the file. It was full of banking terms, ledger entries, and jargon she didn't understand. But as she read, one detail snagged her attention. "Wait," she said, pointing to a column. "This payment to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. $3 million, it's dated October 28th. Yes, it was the payout to the men who were supposed to kill me," Dante confirmed, sounding bored. "No, that's not it," Elena insisted. "Julian knew you were going to Sal's on the 28th, but this payment date is 4 days after the hit." Dante frowned. "It's the closing payment. They get the final balance after the job is done. If the job failed, why would he pay them the final balance?" Elena challenged, her mind racing. If Julian was trying to save money for his rebellion, he wouldn't complete a $3 million payment for a failed hit. Unless... Dante's eyes narrowed, seeing the direction she was going. "Unless what?" "Unless the failure was part of the plan," Elena whispered. Julian wasn't trying to kill you. He was trying to frame someone else and solidify his position, but when I jumped in, the plan went sideways. Dante stared at the ledger, his mind working through the implications. Julian hadn't meant to kill him at Sal's, only scare him, and possibly frame the rival Russo family. But when Elena intervened, Julian had panicked and decided to go for the full assassination and scorched earth plan. Dante closed the folder slowly, the truth settling over him like a shroud. Elena, the waitress with no training, had just analyzed a major betrayal faster and more accurately than his entire financial team. "You're right," Dante admitted, the words heavy with disbelief. He paid them off to ensure their silence and to cover the tracks of his main plan. He played me for a fool. He looked at her, a different kind of intensity in his gaze now, respect mixed with a burgeoning desire. "You are more valuable here than you ever could be in a diner," Dante said, his voice husky. "Stay, Elena. Live here. Learn this life. I'll protect you from the world. And you protect me from myself." Elena looked down at the ledger, then at her bandaged arm, and finally into the devastating steel grey of Dante's eyes. She had lost her anonymity. She had lost her simple life. There was no going back. "Fine," she said, the word a reluctant commitment. "But if I stay, I'm not a kept woman or a prisoner. I'm your partner, and I want the truth. Always." Dante smiled, a true, rare smile that transformed his face and made her heart stumble. "Welcome to the family, Elena." The transformation of Elena Vance did not happen overnight, but to the outside world it seemed instantaneous. The girl who had once memorized the Tuesday night dinner specials was now memorizing the intricate, blood-soaked geography of Chicago's underworld. 2 weeks had passed since Julian's betrayal, and the penthouse had settled into a rhythm that was deceptive in its calm. To an outsider, it was a home. To Elena, it was a war room. Her days began at 6 a.m. She didn't wake up to an alarm clock, but to the sound of Dante's heavy bag workout in the gym adjacent to the main hall. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud was the heartbeat of the house. Her role was undefined on paper, but essential in practice. Dante called her his associate. The guards called her the lady. But in the privacy of the glass-walled study, she was becoming something far more dangerous, a strategist. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the true nature of her position was tested. Dante was holding a meeting with his 3 remaining capos, hard men with scarred knuckles and eyes that had seen too much. They sat around the mahogany table, ignoring Elena, who sat quietly in the corner with a laptop. "The unions are squeezing us at the shipping terminal," spat Matteo, a burly man with a thick neck and a short temper. "They want another 5%. I say we send a message, break a few legs, remind them who keeps the lights on." Dante sat at the head of the table, rubbing his temples. He looked exhausted. The war with his brother had drained the family's coffers, and he couldn't afford a strike at the docks. "We can't afford the heat, Matteo. The police are already watching the ports because of Julian's mess. If we break legs, we bring the feds down on our heads." "Then what?" Matteo slammed his hand on the table. "We pay? We look weak?" "You don't have to pay." Elena's voice cut through the testosterone-heavy air. Silence descended on the room. Matteo turned slowly, his face flushing red. "Excuse me? The waitress has an opinion?" Dante didn't defend her immediately. He simply leaned back, spinning a pen in his fingers. "Go on, Elena." Elena stood up, smoothing the front of her charcoal pencil skirt. She walked to the table, ignoring Matteo's glare, and turned her laptop screen towards them. "I've been reviewing the union leader's financials," Elena said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Frankie, the fist Miller. He talks a big game about worker rights, but look at this." She pointed to a series of highlighted transactions. Every month, 2 days before he demands a rate hike, a shell company registered to his wife's maiden name receives a deposit from an account in New Jersey. That account is linked to the Russo family. The room went deadly silent. "Russo is paying him to squeeze you," Elena concluded. "He's not fighting for the workers. He's an asset for your enemy. If you break his legs, he becomes a martyr. But if you leak these documents to the union board, his own men will take him out for betraying them. You don't spend a dime, and you don't throw a single punch." Matteo looked at the screen, then at Dante, then back at the girl he had dismissed. He grunted, a sound of reluctant respect. "She's right, boss. The timestamps match." Dante looked at Elena. For a second, his mask of command slipped, revealing a flash of burning pride. "Do it," he ordered. "Leak the documents." As the men filed out 10 minutes later, Matteo stopped by the door. He nodded at Elena. "Good catch, Miss Vance." When the door clicked shut, the energy in the room shifted instantly. The professional distance evaporated, replaced by the heavy, suffocating tension that had been building between Elena and Dante for days. "You handled him well," Dante said, standing up and walking over to the wet bar. "Matteo doesn't respect anything he can't shoot." "I just did the reading," Elena said, closing her laptop. Her hands were trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "Don't sell yourself short." Dante poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He walked over and handed one to her. Their fingers brushed, a spark of static electricity snapping between them. Neither pulled away. "You saw what my entire security team missed. You have a talent for this life, Elena. It frightens me." "Why?" she asked, taking a sip. The whiskey burned pleasantly on its way down. "Because this life destroys soft things," Dante murmured, his eyes scanning her face, lingering on her lips. "And I have been trying very hard to keep you soft." "I'm not soft," Elena countered, stepping closer. "I took a bullet, remember?" "I remember." Dante's voice dropped to a growl. "I see it every time I close my eyes." He turned abruptly, breaking the moment, and walked toward the balcony doors. "I have work to do. Go to bed, Elena." It was a dismissal, but Elena was done being dismissed. Hours later, the penthouse was dark, save for the city lights bleeding in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena couldn't sleep. The victory in the meeting room felt hollow compared to the ache in her chest every time Dante walked away from her. She found him on the balcony. It was a freezing November night, the wind whipping off Lake Michigan with biting cruelty. Dante was standing at the railing, wearing only a white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, the sleeves rolled up to reveal the dark ink of his tattoos. He was smoking, the cherry of the cigarette glowing bright orange against the darkness. Elena slid the glass door open. The rush of cold air hit her, but she didn't flinch. "You'll catch your death out here," she said softly. Dante didn't turn around. "I'm immune to the cold. Go back inside, Elena." "No." He turned then, surprise etching his features. Elena Vance, the girl who used to apologize for bringing the wrong toast, was standing her ground against the capo of Chicago. She walked to the railing, standing beside him. The view was breathtaking, a grid of gold and white lights stretching into the black abyss of the lake. But her eyes were on him. "Talk to me," she said, "and don't give me the 'it's for your own protection' speech. What is actually wrong?" Dante took a long drag of the cigarette, exhaling a plume of smoke that was snatched away by the wind. "The Russo family," he admitted. "The move with the union leader. It was a stall tactic. Victor Russo is coming for the North Dockyards. It's the main artery for our imports. If we lose the docks, the Moretti family is finished within 6 months. So we fight for them, Elena said simply. It's not that simple. Dante crushed the cigarette out on the railing. He turned to face her fully, his expression tortured. To hold the docks, I have to go to war. Full scale. People will die. And when the bullets start flying, I cannot guarantee your safety here. I should send you away, to Europe. Somewhere Russo can't find you. I'm not going anywhere, Elena said, her voice rising. Why? Dante snapped, his composure cracking. Why are you so stubborn? Do you not understand what I am? I am a criminal, Elena. I have blood on these hands. I am drowning, and you are trying to swim out to save me. You'll only drown, too. Maybe I want to drown, Elena whispered. The admission hung in the cold air between them. Dante stared at her, his steel-grey eyes searching hers. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Elena took a step closer, closing the final distance between them. She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed her palm against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering against her fingertips, fast, erratic, human. You think you're a monster, Dante. But a monster wouldn't have spent every night for the last 2 weeks sitting outside my door to make sure I slept. A monster wouldn't have paid off my mother's mortgage anonymously. Dante froze. How did you— I checked the accounts now, remember? Elena smiled sadly. You try to push me away, but everything you do pulls me closer. Dante groaned, a low sound of defeat. He caught her hand in his, gripping it tight. Elena. Tell me to go, she challenged him, looking up into his eyes. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me you don't want me, and I will pack my bags and leave tonight. Dante looked at her, at the fierce set of her jaw, the vulnerability in her eyes, the moonlight catching the curve of her neck. The restraint he had built, brick by brick, crumbled into dust. I cannot, he rasped. God help me, I cannot. He moved with sudden, predatory grace. One hand tangled into her hair, tilting her head back, while the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard body. You are the only clean thing in my world, he whispered against her lips, and I am going to ruin you. Then ruin me, she breathed. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle, movie star kiss. It was in collision. It was desperate, hungry, and possessive. It tasted of whiskey, tobacco, and danger. Dante kissed her like a man starving, devouring her sigh as his mouth moved over hers with demanding intensity. Elena melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him down. The cold wind whipped around them, but she felt like she was burning alive. All the fear of the shooting, the trauma of the hospital, the anxiety of the new life, it all poured into this moment. He walked her backward, pressing her up against the cold glass of the balcony door, shielding her from the wind with his body. His hands roamed over her back, memorizing her shape, claiming her. When he finally pulled back, they were both gasping for air, their foreheads resting against each other. The city lights blurred in Eleanor's vision. The only thing sharp and real was him. Listen to me, Dante said, his voice rough, vibrating through her chest. He framed her face with his large hands, forcing her to look at him. Us, it changes everything. Once we cross this line, there is no going back to the guest room. There is no going back to the diner. I know, Elena said. No, you listen. His eyes blazed with a terrifying intensity. My enemies will not just see you as an employee anymore. They will see you as my heart, and they will try to cut you out of me to kill me. You are painting a target on your back. I already have a target, Elena said, brushing her thumb over the scar on his eyebrow. I'd rather wear it standing next to you than hiding from you. Dante closed his eyes for a moment, resting his cheek against her palm. When he opened them again, the hesitation was gone. In its place was a cold, iron resolve. "Then so be it," he swore. "From this night on, you are mine. You are under my protection, under my name, under my command. If the world wants to get to you, they will have to burn through me first." He swept her up into his arms, carrying her effortlessly from the cold balcony into the warmth of the penthouse. The glass door slid shut, locking out the wind, the city, and the war that was coming. For tonight, there were no capos, no Russos, no debts. There was only the waitress and the king, and the line they had finally, irrevocably crossed. The war didn't come with a bang, but with a polite invitation. 3 days after the night on the balcony, a courier arrived with a heavy, cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax. It was from Victor Russo, the patriarch of the rival family. He requested a peace summit at midnight at the abandoned Wolf Point warehouse in the North Dockyards. "It's a trap," Luca said, checking his weapon for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Russo doesn't negotiate. He executes." Dante stood by the panoramic window of the penthouse, buttoning his Kevlar vest under a tailored navy suit. "I know. But if I don't go, I look weak. And if I look weak, the other 3 families will descend on us like vultures. I have to walk into the lion's den. Not alone," Elena said. She stepped out of the bedroom. Gone were the waitress uniform and the soft silk robes. She wore a sharp black pantsuit that fit her like armor, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. Her eyes were clear and cold. "You are not coming," Dante said, turning to her. "It is too dangerous." "You said I was your partner," Elena countered, walking over to the table where the layout of the warehouse was spread out. "And you're missing something." She pointed to the blueprints. "Russo chose Wolf Point for a reason. It's isolated. But look at the shipping manifest I found in Julian's decrypted files. Russo has been moving industrial machinery through that specific warehouse for 2 months. It's not machinery, it's nitrates, explosives." Dante froze. He looked at the map, then at Elena. "He's not going to shoot you, Dante," Elena said grimly. "He's going to bury you. He'll blow the building the moment you step inside." "Then we strike first," Luca growled. "No," Elena said, her voice steady. "If we strike first, we start a city-wide war. We need to beat him at his own game. We need to walk in, let him think he's won, and then show him he's the one standing on the landmine." Dante stared at her. In her eyes, he didn't see the terrified girl from Sal's diner anymore. He saw a queen, a woman who had taken the trauma of a bullet and forged it into steel. "Tell me the plan," Dante said. The rain had returned, slicking the cobblestones of the old dockyards. The warehouse loomed like a skeletal beast against the dark sky. Dante's convoy, 3 black SUVs, rolled to a stop. Dante stepped out, flanked by Luca and 4 other guards. Elena stepped out beside him. She saw the flicker of surprise in the eyes of Russo's men, standing guard at the entrance. They weren't expecting a woman. They certainly weren't expecting her to look so calm. They were patted down. Weapons were surrendered. They walked into the cavernous main hall of the warehouse. Victor Russo sat at a small folding table in the center of the empty space, illuminated by a single hanging industrial light. He was a massive man, old and scarred, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dante!" Victor boomed, his voice echoing. "And the waitress. I heard about you. The little hero." "She's not a waitress, Victor," Dante said smoothly, pulling out a chair for Elena before sitting down himself. "She's my counsel." Victor laughed, a wet, rasping sound. "Counsel? You're bringing stray dogs to the high table now? This is why your family is crumbling, boy. You lack discipline." I'm here to discuss terms, Victor, Dante said, ignoring the insult. You want the North Docks. I want peace. I want it all, Victor sneered. He glanced at his watch. And frankly, Dante, this conversation is just a formality. I have men on the roof. I have men at the doors. And in about 3 minutes, I'm going to walk out of here. And this building is going to turn into a pile of rubble with you inside. Dante didn't flinch. Explosives. Nitrates, specifically. Stored in crates labeled farm equipment in the basement. Very clever. Victor's smile faltered. How did you— We didn't just read the manifest, Victor. Elena spoke up. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silence of the warehouse. We rewrote it. Victor looked at her, his eyes narrowing. What is she talking about? Elena pulled a small remote detonator from her clutch purse. It wasn't for a bomb, it was a signal jammer. But Victor didn't know that. Your men in the basement, Elena continued, bluffing with the confidence of a seasoned poker player. They work for money, Victor, not loyalty. We offered them double what you pay. 10 minutes ago, they disconnected the detonators on the main pillars and rewired them to your escape vehicle outside. It was a lie. A beautiful, terrifying lie. The truth was that Luca's team had silently infiltrated the basement an hour ago and neutralized the threat. But Victor didn't need to know the mechanics. He just needed to feel the fear. Victor stood up, his face turning purple. You're lying. Try it, Dante challenged, leaning back in his chair, looking utterly relaxed. Press the button, Victor. See which car blows up. Victor looked at the remote in his own hand, his thumb hovering over the trigger. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He looked at Dante, then at Elena. He saw no fear. Only absolute, terrifying certainty. The silence stretched, taut as a violin string. Suddenly, Victor threw his remote onto the table. "Kill them!" he screamed to his guards. But before a single weapon could be raised, red laser dots appeared on the chests of Victor and his 4 lieutenants. "Sniper teams," Elena said calmly. "North catwalk, south windows. You're checkmated, Victor." Dante stood up slowly. "The machinery meant for the basement. My men have it now. The police have been tipped off anonymously about a massive illegal explosives ring run by the Russo family. The sirens you hear." In the distance, the wail of approaching police cruisers began to rise above the sound of the rain. "That's your exit music," Dante finished. Victor Russo looked around, realizing his empire had just been dismantled, not by a gunfight, but by information and timing. He had been outmaneuvered by the boy he underestimated, and the waitress he mocked. "This isn't over," Victor hissed as he backed away, signaling his men to retreat before the cops arrived. "It is for you," Dante said. As the Russo cars screeched away into the night, heading straight into a police blockade, Dante turned to Elena. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her trembling slightly. Dante saw it. He reached out and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "You didn't blink," he said, awe in his voice. "He was ready to kill us, and you didn't blink." "I was terrified," Elena admitted, letting out a shaky breath. "But I knew you had the snipers, and I knew you wouldn't let me fall." Dante pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist in the middle of the cold, empty warehouse. "You are not a waitress, Elena," he whispered fiercely, pressing his forehead against hers. "You are the queen of this city. And as long as I breathe, no one will ever touch you again." Elena looked up at him, the man who had brought chaos into her life, only to give her the power to control it. She had saved him in a diner, and he had saved her from a life of invisibility. "Take me home, Dante," she said softly. "Let's go home," he replied. They walked out into the rain, not running from the gunfire, but walking toward a future they would rule together. The waitress was gone. The target was gone. All that remained was the legend. And that is how Elena Vance went from pouring coffee for minimum wage to ruling the Chicago underworld. It wasn't a fairy tale, and there were no magic wands. There was just a split-second choice to be brave, a bullet that missed her heart by inches, and a love that grew in the shadows of violence. Some people say that saving a bad man is a mistake, but Eleanor proved that sometimes even the devil needs a guardian angel, and sometimes that angel carries a loaded gun. She didn't just survive the Mafia, she tamed it. Wow, what a ride. I hope you guys were on the edge of your seat for that finale. It just goes to show that courage can come from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And I want to know, if you were in Eleanor's shoes at the diner, would you have yelled, "Get down," or would you have hidden behind the counter? Let me know your honest answer in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. I'll see you in the next video with another dramatic tale. Thanks for watching.